Welcome to Law and Life, the Levoritz Approach.
Hello and welcome to Law and Life, the Levoritz Approach with experienced attorney Yonatan Levoritz. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we are going to discuss navigating spousal maintenance or alimony in New York. Yoni, great to see you.
Great to see you too, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Can you explain the different types of spousal maintenance in New York? I know you said there's a lot, so we don't have to go through everything if you don't want to, but maybe is there some that are the most common ones that you find that maybe people would want to know about?
Every case is different. Therefore, you have 15 factors that basically cover spousal maintenance, right? From those 15 factors, the last factor is anything a court deems just and proper. So there are lots of things that a court can throw into that factor, which doesn't really take into account anything but the court's feelings and emotions on the matter and who they're most sympathetic to. So, for example, there's a factor about having disabled children. There's a factor about lifestyle. There's a factor about, how much money you may get in terms of equitable distribution and how that money may be able to help support you. There's, of course, the length of the marriage, the health of the parties, the ability of the parties to support the alimony or maintenance or spousal support order. So there are a lot of interesting things there. And in lower, income cases, there's a cap. But in higher income cases, it really depends upon what the court wants to do with regard to that cap.
All right. So last episode, we talked about prenups and postnups. How do they factor into the spousal maintenance?
Well, they're an excellent factor because the bottom line is you have the ability to set your own maintenance schedule. You have the ability to set a schedule which says, you know what, if I'm earning, and again, these are made up numbers, $1 million a year, then I'm going to pay you 10% of my income for XYZ number of years that we're married. And if I'm making $500,000 a year, then I'll pay you XYZ number of dollars for the number of years that we're married. And you can kind of figure out to a certain extent on your own what you'd like to be paid.
Okay.
And the other party has to agree to it, of course.
Of course. Yeah, of course. What are some of the factors that New York courts consider when they calculate the amount as well as the duration of spousal maintenance?
Well, duration, we have guidelines. So the guidelines basically say if you're married for XYZ number of years, you'll have the ability to get maintenance for a period of time. And it gives a range of that period of time. And we would do the same thing in a prenup or a postnup, giving a duration of time and an amount. But that amount in New York is based upon those 15 factors that we spoke about. So when we start going through those factors, for example, let's say everybody was hunky-dory for the first 10 years of marriage. Child becomes disabled at age 10. Well, that maintenance number in New York just changed drastically because that person who's taking care of the child now has the burden of taking care of a disabled child, or the lifestyle. They get married, husband's making $1 million a year. They're getting divorced, husband's making $10 million a year. Again, this puts you in a situation where the guidelines are going to govern and the factors are going to govern. And while everybody has to know the factors and the guidelines and know what their presumptive amount of support may be, you have to be able to explain, to a person, listen, if we're going to make a deal, it's got to be a fair deal on both sides.
When you're advocating for your clients that are seeking spousal maintenance, are there any specific strategies you employ to ensure fair support, or is each case kind of its own unique thing?
Every case is unique.
Yeah.
Every case is based upon the factors. So when a client comes in, you discuss the factors from those 15 that allow you to go ahead and pursue the greatest amount of award for them in terms of their marriage. You get a 1-year marriage or a 1.5-year marriage, you're going to be telling the client, listen, you're not getting very much, if anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Even if the guy's making $1 million a year, you're not getting very much, if anything. But on the flip side of that, if they've been married for 20 years, you're going to say, oh, wow, well, you might be entitled to 6-7 years of maintenance. And you look at the guidelines, of course, then you say, listen, based upon the income, based upon the guidelines, I think we can get an order of support that's based upon this amount of income. Okay. But if you have an agreement, you take all that away.
And in the agreements, do you make the agreement, the prenuptial or postnuptial agreements based on how long you're married?
Absolutely. We have
Yeah.
guideline amounts for each individual year. Therefore, if the marriage survives 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and we don't go year by year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We say, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. And then, of course, after 20, we start talking about, whether there should be a lifetime award or, some other basis for making an award to the other spouse.
How does the court assess the financial capabilities of both spouses?
Well, if they're W-2s, that's easy. You basically say, listen, you're making what you've been making, and it's been years now that you've been making it. So it's easy to assess. If someone is not living up to their earning capabilities, then you have to hire what's called a vocational expert. And a vocational expert will come in and explain, based upon their capabilities, they have the ability to earn X, Y, and Z.
Okay. What is that? Is that usually just based on education, skills, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, yes.
So if you have somebody who is capable of getting $100,000 a year job, but wants to work for themselves or pursue some sort of other career when they're only pulling in 30 grand a year or something like that, that vocational expert to say, okay, you're only making this, or you bring the vocational expert in to say, you're only making this, but you really could be making this.
That's exactly what we do. The vocational expert is there to go ahead and assess the capability of the person to generate income.
Okay, that's interesting. How can one party challenge what they might feel as an unfair maintenance order?
Well, they can appeal it. Okay, they can move to renew or re-argue it and say to the court, listen, you made a mistake, or the calculation is wrong, or there's no way I can afford this. It's just not possible. How can you come to this conclusion? There are different ways of challenging it, but the two main ways are, of course, the appeal and, of course, going back before the court saying, listen, this order should be vacated and changed.
If that vocational expert comes in and someone's like, I can't make that much money. I've never made that much money or something like that. Do they have recourse to challenge that?
Yeah, they can hire their own expert.
Oh, okay. And then it's just up to the courts to decide which expert they believe?
Absolutely. It's a battle of the experts.
Wow. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Have you seen any battles of the experts?
Yes, absolutely. It happens all the time. I had it in one of my first divorce trials going back about 19 years ago. We fought over the capability of a woman who had no education, basically, except for high school. And it came down to the fact that even though the court didn't listen to either of the experts, it came down to the fact that, the woman had the ability to generate income. She never really worked, but therefore they looked at minimum wage aspects, they looked at other aspects, and found that she certainly could go work at a place like, making this up again, Whole Foods or Macy's or a car dealership, and generate $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 per year.
What are some of the common disputes you've seen that arise over spousal maintenance?
Most common disputes are people don't want to pay it. Who wants to pay their ex-wife?
That's true.
Who wants to cut a check every single month to someone you really don't like and really can't stand? But in terms of challenges, you use the factors against the person. You try and say, listen, you never tried to rehabilitate yourself. You never wanted to go to work. You never tried to go to work. You never tried to earn an income. You were always, out partying and having fun and wasting money and spending money. Them in a negative light.
Are there other disputes that you see often?
Sure. You see people who are basically going to argue the fact that they really just simply can't afford the award. That basically, if they're going to have the ability to move forward with their lives, which a court shouldn't stop them necessarily from doing, they have to take responsibility for their, prior life first, for whatever they did, and then look to move forward. So courts are going to look at those things, but people try and contest them all the time, saying, I've got 3 new kids. What am I going to do with them? I have to explain to them that the first kids come first and the first wife comes first.
Yeah, that's got to be interesting conversations to have with clients.
They're always fun. You just enjoy it as much as possible.
Enjoy the ride.
Yes.
Can spousal maintenance be modified after the divorce is finalized?
It depends. If we're talking about an agreement where basically the litigation was settled as a result of 2 parties coming together, because there are 2 ways to end a divorce: agreement, stipulation, judgment of divorce based upon what the court orders after trial. So if it's after trial, okay, well, then you have a lesser burden. If it's an agreement, it's an extreme hardship standard, okay? But there are times when maintenance is modified. For example, there was a very famous case called Sass versus Sass. And in Sass, The woman had cancer. So the court said, listen, even though you've been divorced for XYZ number of years, you still have to go back and pay maintenance now because the wife simply can't be taken care of. So divorce, in reality, when it comes to maintenance, is never really final. People always try and get out of it. People always try and use it to a certain extent to say, I'm too ill, I'm too old, I'm too sick, I'm too frail. And that works on both sides. But typically speaking, you have to prove an extreme and extraordinary circumstance to get out of making the payment.
So in your example with the woman who had cancer and it got extended, is that basically what the maintenance was extended?
Not extended, it was renewed.
Renewed. Okay.
Lost her maintenance because the divorce ended. Maintenance was paid. A few years goes by under the hypothetical. Okay. Then she comes down with cancer. And the court says, you know what? We're going to give her more money.
So that's what you mean. It's never final because it can change even in that much later after maintenance has already stopped.
Correct.
Wow. I did not know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, once married, always married.
You got a lot of good sayings. I like this. We gotta make you some memes. Are there other circumstances that might warrant a modification? You gave the example of someone coming down with cancer or significant changes like that. Are there other situations that are common?
You know, for the most part, I haven't seen very many, but I would tell you disability is probably a big one.
Yeah.
You know, something happens to someone along the lines of the cancer. I did see a case with regard to someone who had a liver or a kidney problem, okay, and that caused maintenance to come back into effect. So again, there is case law to that effect, although courts don't like to necessarily do it. But courts are also most likely going to empathize with the person who's more in need. Therefore, if you have it, they're going to want you to share it.
Yeah, so if one party's severely ill and the other party is not and has a good amount of money, then they're going to more than likely side with the person who's ill.
That's correct.
Right. That makes sense. How does spousal maintenance intersect with child support obligations?
Well, it intersects with it in terms of the fact that you're going to be receiving a certain amount of money, okay? And therefore, from that money, you have the ability to go ahead and support the children. In terms of direct intersection, okay, there is not much there, okay? It really comes down to the fact that if there's going to be money paid for the children, it's going to be to a certain extent separate rather than combined. Okay. Except that there's what's called basically a joint order, a liquidated order of child support and maintenance, where the two things are combined together, which is common on an interim basis during the course of the divorce, but not as a final divorce order.
Okay. And why would those be combined during the divorce? Just for ease or
probably for ease.
Yeah.
In most cases, I would say it's for ease.
Okay.
Or people don't want the clock to start counting against them because remember, maintenance is durational for the most part. So if you want to avoid that clock, well, if you're giving me child support and maintenance combined, maybe that clock doesn't start yet.
Okay.
What portion is for what thing?
All right. Now I see where you're going with this. All right. So what steps can a spouse take if the other party fails to make the spousal maintenance payments? What can they do?
Income execution, wage garnishment, suspension of licenses, suspension of driver's license, fishing license, hunting license. There are so many different things that people can do. Contempt, put someone in jail. There are tons of mechanisms that people can use.
What is the process? Like if somebody might be listening to this and being like, my deadbeat ex isn't making their maintenance payments, so I need to do something. What advice would you give them? What should they do?
Well, this is not specific advice for anybody. It's just generalized concept. Okay, I would say move for contempt. Move to have them put in jail. Nothing like putting someone in jail to get them to cough up money.
Another meme. I like it. What's the first? Should they consult an attorney? Should they what is the best thing for them to do?
Always consult an attorney before you do anything.
Yeah. In these situations, do you come across people who think they can kind of manage this themselves without counsel?
All the time.
This just seems like such a complicated world.
It is a very complicated world, but people feel with Google, it's sort of like WebMD or whatever it is.
Yep.
I could diagnose myself. I could treat myself. I can divorce myself. I could do whatever I need on my own just by doing some basic research.
My attorney is ChatGPT, right?
Absolutely. They won't get the case law right, but they'll get some decent ideas.
What you said there, I think there were 15 factors, right? Was that it? 15?
15 factors.
What are are there any other factors that come up that you find are used often that we haven't discussed?
I would say age, health, lifestyle, the fact that someone gave up the ability to work is another big one. They sacrifice for the job opportunities of the other spouse. That's a big one as well.
Yeah.
Okay. But age, health, and lifestyle are the really big ones.
Makes sense. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Law and Life, the Levoritz Approach with experienced attorney Yoni Levoritz. For more information or to connect with Yoni, you could visit leveritzlaw.com. And of course, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments. Yoni, always great to see you. Thanks for the info.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.